It reportedly started with one brutal sentence whispered through palace corridors: Princess Anne wanted everything back. Not next month, not after negotiations, immediately. And according to explosive palace whispers, that single demand sent panic through Meghan's former royal circle, because this was no longer about emotional family drama. This was about royal control, about access, about secrets, about whether traces of the Sussex royal machinery were still floating outside palace walls years after the breakup that nearly shattered the monarchy itself. For years, the world believed the Sussex exit was a heartbreak story, a family war, a glamorous rebellion against royal pressure. But insiders now claim Princess Anne allegedly saw something much colder underneath it all. She reportedly viewed the entire situation not as emotional chaos, but as unfinished institutional business. And that changed everything. Because when royals leave duty, they are not only supposed to leave behind titles in practice and balcony appearances, they are supposed to surrender the entire system that powered their royal existence. The phones, the passes, the communication channels, the files, the invisible machinery behind the velvet curtains. And according to royal whispers, Anne believed some of those threads had never been fully pulled back. That is where the alleged audit became terrifying inside palace circles. Former staff connected to Meghan's royal operation were reportedly contacted through formal channels and asked to account for items connected to royal service. Not glamorous treasure, not tiaras or diamonds. That almost would have been easier. Instead, insiders claim the requests involved communication devices, archived materials, access credentials, office equipment, and security-linked property that carried quiet institutional power. Suddenly, what once looked like harmless leftovers allegedly became symbols of something far more dangerous: lingering royal access. And insiders say Anne was absolutely unmoved by sentiment, because in her world, duty is not emotional. It is structural. A misplaced credential is not just a forgotten object. It is a breach. A palace-issued device is not merely technology. It represents access to systems built on hierarchy, trust, and silence. Palace aides reportedly tried to soften the entire situation, describing it as routine administrative reconciliation. But insiders insist the atmosphere behind the scenes was ice cold. The timing felt deliberate. The tone reportedly felt severe. And the involvement of Princess Anne made palace staff instantly understand this was not symbolic housekeeping. This was the old guard tightening its grip. The question echoing through royal circles became impossible to ignore. Why now? Why, after interviews, memoirs, accusations, and years of emotional warfare, would the palace allegedly reopen the machinery of the Sussex departure? According to whispers from inside the institution, the answer was terrifyingly simple: control. The monarchy, already weakened by illness, scandal, and transition, could not afford unresolved shadows tied to former working royals. The palace allegedly wanted certainty before the next royal era officially took shape, because royal equipment is never just equipment. A palace-issued phone carries authority. A briefing folder carries trust. A security pass carries institutional recognition. Even something as ordinary as office materials routed through palace systems can represent invisible ties to monarchy itself. And according to insiders, Anne allegedly saw every unresolved item as proof that the Sussex separation had never been fully sealed. That is what made Frogmore Cottage suddenly return to the center of the storm. Once presented as Harry and Meghan's sanctuary, Frogmore reportedly became something much darker inside palace thinking, an institutional wound left half closed. Because according to whispers, the administrative trail connected to Frogmore stretched through Kensington Palace, Buckingham Palace, former communications offices, security departments, and household systems. Every location carried records. Every record carried questions. What had been returned? What had been reassigned? What remained outside official control simply because nobody wanted another public war? And monarchy hates unresolved mess. Princess Anne reportedly viewed the situation not as personal revenge against Meghan, but as a dangerous weakening of royal discipline. According to insiders, her position was brutally straightforward. When royal duty ends, royal infrastructure ends with it. No halfway privileges, no lingering operational access, no emotional exceptions. In the unforgiving architecture of monarchy, departure requires surrender, not only of status, but of systems. That allegedly created enormous tension for Meghan's former staff and supporters, because the process reportedly felt humiliating. There is a difference between being forgotten and being audited. Forgotten allows dignity. Audited demands explanations. Former Sussex staff were allegedly pulled back into paperwork, equipment logs, archived office records, and return confirmations tied to a royal chapter many believed had already died years ago. And the deeper palace administrators allegedly dug into into old records, the uglier the symbolism became. Because the Sussex departure had never unfolded like a clean resignation. It unfolded like a rupture under global attention. Offices dissolved rapidly. Staff changed. Responsibilities shifted. Emotions exploded publicly. According to insiders, that chaos allegedly left administrative shadows buried across royal systems, and reportedly refused to let those shadows survive any longer. Then came the most explosive twist of all. Whispers circulating through palace watchers claim Prince William quietly supported Anne's harder line, and that changed the meaning of the alleged audit completely. Suddenly, this was no longer merely the personal severity of Princess Anne. This became the future king aligning with the institutional old guard. According to insiders, William allegedly understood the danger of blurred royal boundaries better than anyone. A monarchy preparing for its next reign could not inherit unresolved access questions from the last family war, and that is why the alleged inventory review reportedly transformed into something much larger than housekeeping. It became a firewall. Royal departments allegedly coordinated quietly behind the scenes. Security teams, communications offices, administrative divisions, property management systems, each one reportedly searching for anything still connected to royal service that had not been formally surrendered, deactivated, or explained. The process reportedly moved with terrifying patience, not dramatic, not emotional, just cold procedural pressure. That is Anne's alleged power inside the monarchy, not noise, precision. According to palace whispers, she understands that the most devastating royal actions are often the ones that appear ordinary from the outside. A return form, a serial number, a deadline, a missing receipt. Inside palace machinery, those things reportedly cut deeper than headlines because they send one message very clearly: the institution is reclaiming control. And from Meghan's camp, insiders claim the process allegedly carried a brutal emotional sting. Every returned item symbolized separation from royal power itself. Devices once linked to palace systems, credentials once tied to official status, materials once connected to trust and proximity. When the palace allegedly requested them back, the meaning was impossible to ignore. The connection was officially over. What made the alleged audit even more chilling was the fact that nobody inside the palace reportedly treated it like revenge. Revenge would have been emotional, loud, messy. This felt something far more dangerous, controlled, clinical, institutional. According to whispers moving through royal corridors, Princess Anne allegedly approached the entire situation like a military cleanup operation after a political rupture. No drama, no speeches, no public humiliation campaign, just procedures, records, signatures, and relentless pressure hidden behind formal language. And insiders said that was exactly why Meghan's former circle allegedly found the process so unsettling. Because when the monarchy stops arguing emotionally and starts moving administratively, it usually means the decision has already been made behind closed doors. Palace sources reportedly claim the review expanded deeper than anyone expected. What began as questions about devices and office materials allegedly evolved into a wider examination of household access itself, former communication systems, archived staff permissions, security-linked materials, old office allocations connected to Frogmore Cottage and Kensington Palace. According to whispers, the palace allegedly wanted every remaining thread traced back to its source, not because each individual item carried explosive value on its own, but because together they represented something the institution fears more than scandal: uncertainty. Because monarchy survives on structure, on records, on invisible boundaries that separate those inside the royal machine from those outside it. The Sussex departure had already shattered the illusion of unity in front of the world. Interviews exposed pain. Memoirs exposed resentment. Public accusations turned royal family wounds into global entertainment. But according to palace whispers, Anne allegedly believed the institution had made one enormous mistake after the separation. It allowed emotional exhaustion to interrupt administrative closure. Reports claim former Sussex staff were quietly asked to verify return records tied to official assignments from years earlier. Equipment logs were allegedly reopened, access histories reviewed, office inventories cross-checked against archived records. No public accusations were made because that was never the palace strategy. The pressure reportedly came through silence and process, through official requests that looked harmless on paper but carried devastating symbolic weight inside royal culture. The terrifying part for Sussex supporters was the implication hidden underneath the request. If the palace was reopening records now, did that mean the institution believed loose ends still existed? Had old systems remained partially unresolved after Harry and Meghan left royal life? Had the monarchy itself quietly tolerated blurred boundaries simply to avoid creating further public chaos during the family crisis? Those Those questions reportedly began haunting palace watchers as whispers about the audit spread. Then, another explosive layer allegedly emerged behind the scenes. According to royal insiders, William's office reportedly viewed the matter not simply as unfinished Sussex drama, but as a future reign issue. And suddenly, the emotional conflict transformed into something much larger. Because if Prince William truly supported Anne's harder institutional line, then the alleged audit was no longer about punishing the past. It was about protecting the monarchy's future. The palace allegedly stopped treating the Sussex chapter like a family wound that time would eventually soften. Instead, according to whispers, it began treating it like an operational breach that required formal closure before the next royal era could fully begin. And for William, insiders claim the stakes were enormous. A future king cannot inherit blurred systems. He cannot begin his reign while old royal access questions remain unresolved in the shadows of previous conflict. For Harry, insiders claim the situation allegedly became deeply uncomfortable because practical responsibility collided directly with emotional rebellion. Publicly, the Sussexes had built a new life independent from royal control, but the alleged audit reportedly dragged them back into the language of compliance. Verify, return, account for, surrender. Those cold institutional words allegedly reopened tensions the couple believed they had already escaped. Because to her, insiders suggest the crown does not operate on feelings. It operates on rules. And rules only matter when they are enforced even during uncomfortable moments. That allegedly became the moral center of the entire conflict. The monarchy could survive criticism. It could survive scandal. It could survive emotional fallout. But according to Anne's reported thinking, it could not survive weakened institutional discipline. That is why the alleged review reportedly became symbolic inside palace culture. It was not merely an audit of old office materials. It became a declaration that the old guard was awake again. The monarchy was drawing hard lines before William's future reign inherited unresolved shadows from the Sussex rupture. According to palace whispers, the institution reportedly recognized that the public had misunderstood Princess Anne for years. While other royals became associated with glamour, media attention, or emotional narratives, Anne allegedly operated differently. She represented structure itself, the iron framework hidden beneath royal ceremony, the figure willing to enforce boundaries without needing applause for it. That is why insiders say she allegedly never feared being disliked during this process. To Anne, according to whispers, popularity was irrelevant compared to institutional survival. And perhaps that is what made the alleged audit so psychologically devastating. Nobody needed to scream. Nobody needed public confrontation. The monarchy simply began reclaiming itself piece by piece through forms, procedures, archived records, and silent administrative force. The palace reportedly transformed years of emotional chaos into organized closure. By the final stage of the alleged review, insiders claim the meaning had become unmistakable inside royal circles. The crown was no longer tolerating symbolic leftovers from the Sussex era. Every unresolved thread had to be pulled back into institutional control before the monarchy moved forward. For King Charles, palace whispers portray the situation as deeply painful. A father exhausted by years of family warfare, allegedly caught between emotional reconciliation and institutional necessity. Some insiders claim Charles may have preferred softer handling, hoping time would eventually cool every conflict naturally. But monarchy rarely allows emotional comfort to override operational security. And according to whispers, even Charles ultimately understood the logic behind Anne's severity.